"We're not paying for this circus," Dad announced, canceling my wedding. Mom added, "Find someone who can afford you." I simply said, "Understood." The next day, the venue called Dad screaming, "Why did the owner cancel your daughter's refund?" The phone call came at 7:23 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 weeks before what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. I was sitting in my modest apartment, sipping coffee and reviewing quarterly reports for Phoenix Hospitality Group, my $2.8 billion empire that my family knew nothing about. "Emma, we need to talk." Dad's voice was stern business, like "Come to the house." Now I knew this wasn't good. Dad only used that tone when he was about to deliver what he considered important family decisions, the kind where everyone else had already been consulted, except me. 20 minutes later, I walked into the familiar living room of my childhood home. Mom sat rigid on the leather sofa, her lips pressed into a thin line. Dad stood by the fireplace like he was addressing a board meeting. My younger sister Jessica lounged in the armchair, scrolling through her phone with that smirk she'd perfected since high school. "Sit down, Emma," Dad commanded, not looking at me. I remained standing. "What's this about your wedding?" Mom's voice was ice cold. "We've made a decision." My heart started racing, but I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of decision?" Dad turned to face me. His jaw set. "We're not paying for this circus anymore." The words hit like a slap. "Excuse me. You heard me." He crossed his arms. "This whole production you've planned, it's ridiculous. $75,000 for one day, the venue, the flowers, the photographer, it's all excessive." "We agreed on the budget months ago," I said quietly. Jessica finally looked up from her phone. "Yeah. Well, that was before we realized how much money you were wasting on stupid stuff, like, what? Like that dress?" Mom interjected, $4,000 for something you'll wear once and those centerpieces, who needs crystal and gold leaf at a wedding? I took a deep breath. "I've been planning this for 8 months. Marcus, Dad interrupted with a sneer, "That's another problem. The guy works at a non-profit. What kind of future is that? No ambition, no real income? He's a good man, good doesn't pay bills." Mom added, "Maybe this is a sign you should reconsider the whole thing." My chest tightened. "You want me to call off my wedding? We want you to be realistic." Dad said, "Find someone who can actually afford the lifestyle you seem to expect, someone with prospects." Jessica snorted, "Yeah, because living in that tiny apartment and driving a 10-year-old Honda really screams high expectations." The room fell silent. I looked at each of their faces, Dad's stern disapproval, Mom's cold judgment, Jessica's amused contempt. These people had raised me, supposedly loved me, and now they were dismantling the most important day of my life like it was a failed business venture. "So what exactly are you saying?" I asked. Dad walked to his desk and pulled out a folder I've already called the venue. "Cancelled everything. The deposits are forfeited, but at least we're not throwing away the full amount." My stomach dropped. "You cancelled my wedding venue. Our name was on the contracts." Mom said, matter-of-factly, legally, we had every right. The caterer, too, Jessica added helpfully, and the photographer, and the florist. I stared at them in disbelief. "You cancelled my entire wedding without telling me. We're telling you now." Dad said, "Consider it a favor. You'll thank us later when you find someone more suitable, someone who can afford you." Mom repeated. The room spun slightly. 8 months of planning the dress, I'd fallen in love with the photographer, we'd interviewed 6 different candidates to find the menu. Marcus and I had spent hours perfecting the flowers that reminded me of my grandmother's garden, all of it gone. "I can't believe you did this." I whispered. "Believe it," Dad said, "and next time, maybe think before you plan something so far beyond your means." I looked at my family one more time. Dad, the successful investment banker who'd built his reputation on calculated risks, Mom, who'd married him for his money and spent 30 years perfecting the art of looking down on people. Jessica, who'd never worked a day in her life, but somehow felt qualified to judge everyone else's choices. Understood. I said simply. The word hung in the air. They'd expected tears, arguments, pleading is that I gave them nothing good. Dad said, clearly pleased with himself. "Now you can focus on finding someone more appropriate, someone who won't embarrass the family." Mom added. I nodded and walked toward the door. "Emma?" Jessica called out, "Don't be dramatic about this. It's for your own good." I paused with my hand on the doorknob. "I'm not being dramatic. I'm being practical," and I left. The drive back to my apartment was surreal. 23 years old, MBA from Northwestern, secretly running a hospitality empire worth $2.8 billion, and my parents had just canceled my wedding because they thought I couldn't afford it. The irony was breathtaking. I built Phoenix Hospitality Group from nothing, starting with a single property I'd purchased at 19 with money I'd made developing apps in college. 4 years later, I owned 17 luxury venues across 3 states, including the Grandmont Estate, the exact venue where my wedding was supposed to take place. My parents had no idea their daughter owned the most exclusive wedding venue in the city. They thought I was just another struggling graduate living paycheck to paycheck. I'd let them think that it was easier than explaining how I turned a coding hobby into a tech company, sold it for $12 million, and immediately invested everything into real estate, easier than describing the 18-hour days I'd worked to build something from scratch while they assumed I was just figuring things out. But now they crossed a line. I pulled into my apartment complex and sat in my car for a moment, thinking my phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Hey, babe, just confirmed final headcount with a caterer. 127 guests can't wait to marry you in 3 weeks. Red heart." My heart broke a little. Marcus had no idea what had just happened. He was probably at his office right now, excited about our future, completely unaware that my family had just blown up our wedding. I needed to call him, but first I had a few other calls to make. I dialed my assistant's number. "Sir. It's Emma. I need you to pull the Grandmont contracts immediately." "The Grandmont estate, your wedding venue, yes, and I need you to review the cancellation policies we have in place for deposits." There was a pause. "Emma, is everything okay?" "Everything's fine. I just need to understand our options for unusual circumstances." "Of course, I'll have everything ready in an hour." "Thank you." My next call was to my head of legal. "David, it's Emma. Hypothetical question. If someone canceled a booking at one of our venues using forged authorization, what would our legal recourse be?" "Well, that would be fraud.